Ja sitten hän löysi myös hienon hoidon, sähköhoidon, joka on auttanut häntä ja aika monia muitakin.
Hoito oli hyvä kokemus Raulille, mutta mitenköhän rankalta hoito nykyään näyttää? Monella on vielä väärä käsitys hoidosta, jota ennen nimitettiin sähköshokkihoidoksi.
It is quite clear that this electroshock treatment has a bad reputation from Nazi Germany, which most of today's youth and others have managed to forget. Based on this article published this week in year 1939, there was an article published in History of Psychiatry which I cannot find it on internet anymore. There was one Nazi doctor praised electroshock as a method of murdering mentally ill patients, and almost immediately in October, Nazi Hitler signed the authorization for German doctors to euthanize all psychiatric patients deemed incurable. This must mean the T4 action, which was actually a systematic murder operation by state authorities in which all citizens deemed unprofitable to the German state were killed. This is almost identical to the actions of the Finnish terrorist state, whose medical psychiatry attracts citizens who are not useful to the state to come to psychiatric clinics to tell what is wrong with them, and where all these problem citizens commit suicide for completely inexplicable reasons, which as an action is just a more advanced version of the systematic murder and extermination of the Nazi German authorities and doctors, and what this action of Finnish state and national coalition doctors are doing in Finland and Finnish medical care clinics. I must admit as a crime reporter that Nazi Hitler had much more dick, balls and backbone than the paedophile of the National Coalition, Sorely the two-faced Niinisto who plays James Bond on Swedish soil and Kim Jong-un on Finnish soil with his own personal disorders, and how even the title of Commander-in-Chief of the Finnish Army or the Presidency of Finland does not satisfy this idiot's perversion to high office place, because behind these murders, which we read in the newspapers about youngsters who committed suicide, of which there were 2,400 suicides in year 2016 and 18. There are no black and white on paper that these are systematic murder operation done by Finnish state and national coalition doctors, like for example, Action T4 was in Nazi Germany and which there was a document. But these murders done by the national coalition doctors within the borders of the Finnish state are carried out lawyer-like quietly with excuses like suicide, and with the help of these little girls, brainwashed in Finnish army and who are sent to Finnish medical care clinics to carry out this 21st century extermination and tortures of citizens unprofitable to the state, and which is committed in the name of the patriotism and the insane perversions towards the national coalition finance margins. These excuses with suicides can be seen better in the case of Eva-Kaisa Nicola, the wife who murdered her husband, Jiri Nicola, by poisoning him with methanol, and who was arrested later by the Finnish police and was found dead in her own cell, 2 months after, and which the Finnish police staged as a suicide. And these suicides are not the only excuse that the Finnish terrorist state whose police run the drug trade from its own headquarters, uses, but the Finnish coalition government, which has brought in private pharmaceutical companies with the help of Mihailänen's Mikael Lilius, has actually revealed that this seasonal flu, or coronavirus, has been one such excuse for the Finnish state, the coalition government, and Mihailänen's gig doctors to murder 13,000 elderly people in Finnish healthcare who are unprofitable for the state, whose capital committed as pensions can be released into the tax haven accounts of the coalition government and the Finnish state for reuse, because their lives are too pointless to live, let alone that they are too expensive to maintain for the Finnish state and the coalition government. The Finnish state, which earned €28.6 million per month for each elderly person who was prematurely buried, is too much money for the National Coalition Party to simply not murder these elderly people, whose attitude towards financial margins is as sick as Nazi Hitler's attitude towards world conquest. in connection with which he was ready to send all German kindergarten-age children to fight in the war he started, and the same can certainly be seen in the case of Petteri Orpo and Sauli Niinisto, who are ready to send all the Finnish state's money to their own tax haven accounts as long as they win this war in Finnish medical clinics where all citizens who are not useful to the state will be executed like Jews and their children, and in front of which Nazi Petteri and paedophile Niinisto use all the credibility of state authorities when it spreads its excuses and lies as to why these people have died in medical clinics, after which no one will believe these bullshit stories anymore. And as can be seen from the Finnish case, it doesn't matter who sits in the governments of these democratic states. They are incapable of anything other than enacting new laws that only strengthen this authoritarian dictatorship by which these citizens who are not useful to the Finnish state are executed in medical clinics like Jews in Nazi Germany. This means that Finland as a state is actually an authoritarian dictatorship just like Nazi Germany, but this has not been achieved by introducing some law enacted in the name of martial law, but by the fact that the universities and the National Coalition Party have managed to drive their own members into every aspect of the Finnish authorities, including the press, who have apparently sworn allegiance to this 21st century persecution of Jews and racial doctrine, which is being done this time in the name of mental health problems and whose target is, just like in the time of Nazi Germany, all citizens who are not useful to the state, who are being lured to psychiatric clinics to be destroyed by medically poisoning them, which is done with the help of a doctor's prescription, where these patients are fed poisons used in cancer treatment for autumn-day depression and which will kill them sooner or later. And as you can see from this YLE propaganda video, these horrors of Nazi medicine have been dug up from Auschwitz and are being advertised to the public as treatments for imaginary diseases, just like in Nazi Germany back in the days, and these treatment methods are actually a systematic torture of these patients who have fallen victim to Finnish medical care, whose main purpose is to destroy the brain functions of these patients and which practically makes them plants in the long run. This would make these patients practically completely receptive to all illegal drug experiments that researchers at the University of Turku such as Hasse Karlsson, Walter Major Helena and Juho Jausa proposed to them as a treatment for an imaginary disease, namely depression, which is caused by the horrible place that these state mental hospitals, i.e. the coalition party's human rat farms, have been built to be. But now back to YLE's propaganda video how National Coalition doctor heals citizens unprofitable to the state with Nazi medicine, which is practically a medical torture method straight from the Nazi bunkers of Auschwitz.
Tässä on alle 30-vuotias potilas, jonka masennukseen lääkehoidot eivät ole tehonneet. Sähköhoitoon hän on tyytyväinen.
Onko tämä hoito suunnilleen sama kaikille vai vaihteleeko se tapaukset?
Joo, kyllä tämä on tosi yksilöllistä, että katsotaan ikä vaikuttaa ja sukupuoli jossain määrin ja sitten myöskin se etenkin elektrodiasettelun, että kuinka tehokasta hoitoa halutaan, niin voidaan sen puolesta muuttaa.
Tämä on semmoinen kevyt nukutus vai?
Joo, sen verran, että potilaat nukahtaa ja todetaan, että potilaat varmasti on täysin rentoina ja sitten sen jälkeen annetaan toi hoito. Sitten potilas nukkuu ja voidaan jo oikeastaan toimenpide sitten antaa. Niin. Ja sitten tulee hoito.
Onko tämä tavallinen reaktio?
Joo, kyllä. Et se on hyvin yksilöllistä, kuinka voimakkaasti tämmöinen motorinen koudistus tapahtuu, mutta välillä on semmoinen, että ei siihen pystytään täysin poistamaan sitä lihasen laksantilla, että pystytään pienentämään. Nyt se alkaa elimistöstä loppumaan ja päässä vielä jatkuu hetken aikaa. Hoitoa annetaan semmoinen 8-12 kappaletta 2-3 kertaa viikossa. Sitten kun masennusoireet on vähentynyt huomattavasti, niin sen jälkeen voidaan sitten lopettaa hoito tai siirtyä ylläpitohoitoon.
Mitä on sähköhoidon kriteerit? Minkälainen henkilö pitää olla kyseessä?
No ehkä tärkein kriteeri on se, että potilas on itse halukas sähköhoitoon. Sellaiset potilaat, joiden kasvojen ilmeet hiukan jäämettyy, joiden motoriikka hidastuu, niin he usein hyötyy sähköhoidosta.
The people who are the target of these treatments are not necessarily able to distinguish truth from falsehood when a truly experienced university-level doctor such as Hasse Carlson, Walter Major Helena or Juho Jalsa sells these Nazi medical torture methods directly from Auschwitz to these uneducated citizens who are unprofitable for the Finnish state as treatments for imaginary diseases whose purpose is to torture these unfortunate citizens perhaps as punishment for something or just to purely murder them out of the state and coalition government budget and financial margins, and that their journey towards systematic murder is of course used in the best possible way among the Nazi medical researchers at the rubbish University of Turku whose academic careers are propped up by these medical human rats.
Taas vastakohtana voisi todeta, että tällaiset ahdistuneet potilaat saattaa pikemminkin hyötyä ketamiinihoidosta tai sarjamagneettistimulaatiohoidosta.
Voidaanko sitä antaa myös pakkohoitona?
Se on äärimmäisen harvinaista.
When Troutimainen talks about forced electroconvulsive therapy in Finland, these rare cases are covered up by a large number of cases, which are a completely false description of the world's happiest nation for the sixth time in a row, where medical psychiatry is deliberately congested with the help of people involved in the organizational activities of the Finnish parliamentary parties. If these cases of forced treatment of electroconvulsive therapy are compared to this false number of patients in psychiatric clinics in world's happiest country in 6 times in a row, which is the work of the parliamentary parties and is carried out in all hospital districts where actually a healthy persons are used to manipulate and to embellish the statistics from the truth of what is done behind these beautiful phrases and facades in the name of forced treatment, such as torturing patients, systematically destroying their brain functions, which only turns these victims of psychiatry into vegetables, and which is the main activity of Rutita Kurttu-Kalshela and her managed EVA unit in Finland, which is certainly the same kind of Nazi medical concentration camp as Nazi Auschwitz was back in the days, only with a better interior design. If this result announced by the YLE propaganda machine, i.e. 175,000 patients and their 1.5 million visits, is compared to the systematic forced treatment in approximately 500 patients in psychiatric hospitals, of course it seems very rare in this large number of misleading visits in Finnish public healthcare that only distort and cover up the truth of what the National Coalition Party, the University of Turku and Rutita Kurttu-Kalshela are doing within the walls of these medical concentration camps. This same burdening of state authorities can be seen in the case of the Eastern Finnish police, which supposedly has 22,000 criminal reports in a queue.
Laitoksen uusi päällikkö Marko Viitanen, tervetuloa.
Kiitos.
Olet juuri aloittanut uudessa virassa ja Itä-Uudenmaan poliisilaitos tunnetaan kenties Suomen ehkä pahimpana niin sanotusti tai haastavimpana alueena, koska juttuja on rästissä paljon ja rikoksia alueellanne tapahtuu paljon, niin miten itse näet tämän Itä-Uudenmaan tilanteen tällä hetkellä?
No onhan se toki haastava. Tällä hetkellä avoimia rikoksia on vähän yli 22 000. Tarkoittaa tietenkin, kyllähän niille tehdään koko ajan jotain, mutta on se määrä suuri. Ja rikosten määrä tänäkin vuonna niin on kasvanut noin 5%.
Kun puhut, että reilut 22 000 rästissä olevaa juttua tällä hetkellä, niin mitä se tarkoittaa? Onko niille jo tehty jotakin vai odottavatko ne sitä, että poliisi ehtisi tarttua niihin?
Osalle tehdään. Totta kai se kuvaa sitä määrää, joka on poliisille ilmoitettu ja sitten osa on tutkinnassa ja osa odottaa sitten tutkintaa.
Jossakin vaiheessa tilanne oli jo ihan parempi Itä-Uudellamaalla. Se saatiin se luku tippumaan noin 17 000, niin miksi ollaan taas tässä tilanteessa?
No ei varmasti se, että jos rikosten määrä kasvaa ja on se tietty rajallinen määrä niiden tutkijoita, niin totta kai siinä lisääntymistä tulee sitten näissä rikoksissa.
Did you hear what Marko Ayutanen said? That the crimes increase according to the number of investigators of the police have. Let's listen to this brain fart again.
No ei varmasti se, että jos rikosten määrä kasvaa ja on se tietty rajallinen määrä niiden tutkijoita, niin totta kai siinä lisääntymistä tulee sitten näissä rikoksissa.
This Ayutanen's brain fart can only mean that the Finnish authorities and police themselves are behind these crimes, such as the Kauhajoki school massacre, the Kamppi and Miemäki bombings, the cases of Päivi Lohi who was murdered in Hairila and the Kopterline accident, which was a systematic murder of these SAK leaders, and this is what my criminal investigation also supports. That the Finnish police is behind these crimes and what is their main task behind the facades of democratic rule of law. State. This criminal activity of the police where it is behind these crimes and what is forced to be covered up by the large amount of petty crime that the Finnish police manages with the help of these unofficial professional criminals, such as Juha Hasselqvist, who was convicted of the fake murder of Jenna Liipomäki, and others like him. And because of this, these 22,000 criminal cases in Eastern Uusimaa cannot be real crimes, just like the fake murder of Jenna Liipomäki who has died in cancer, and most of these 22,000 cases must be fake reports made by these professional criminals of the Finnish police and perhaps even the police officers themselves out of the official working hours, under which the police's own crimes can be buried and all real criminal reports that may rise from the public can be blocked based on workload and resources. This activity where these state authorities and citizen services are closed down due to a self-inflicted labor shortage and by closing down their operations simply by deliberately congesting their operations can be seen in the Finnish healthcare field, which has become a new instrument of the Finnish state and the National Coalition Party's national cleansing, in the name of which no living person on earth or below can question the murderous doctors, their actions on the National Coalition Party's human rat farms, such as the systematic torture of patients in the name of autumn depression, which only means the treatment of imaginary diseases, and what the Nazi German doctors and authorities used when they cured the Jews by killing them with medicine and electrotherapy, and which has become a completely new form of treatment in Finland for cure the problematic citizens unprofitable to the Finnish state and national coalition, which means simply by killing these citizens so that their complaints about their bad lives disappear into the wind. Imagine what kind of number these 22,000 criminal reports are in the Eastern Finnish police and about 500,000 crimes in Finland in general. If I am a Finnish police officer who runs a drug trade from his own headquarters, or a terrorist MP from the National Coalition Party who runs a medical human rat business in his own mental hospitals, or otherwise just murders retired elderly people under the guise and name of coronavirus, then there is nothing to be worried about when the Finnish police do not have the resources or brains to do anything in the face of this crime wave that comes directly from the National Coalition Parties Parliament building, where the laws are enacted to allow their own illegal and criminal activities. And what are these compulsory medical treatment laws that are completely identical in function to the laws created on the basis of Nazi racial doctrine? Do you remember where this topic was originated? Let's look the one part of the film.
Taas vastakohtana voisi todeta, että tällaiset ahdistuneet potilaat saattaa pikemminkin hyötyä ketamiinihoidosta tai sarjamagneettistimulaatiohoidosta.
Voidaanko sitä antaa myös pakkohoitona?
Se on äärimmäisen harvinaista.
If we look, for example, at the case of the Turku stabbing fake terrorist, Abdurrahman Bouanania, who was placed in the Turku mental hospital, which is a hell on earth led by Hannu Lauerman and a Nazi Auschwitz at the same address. Puanania was force-fed medication with the assistance of 3 guards in the Turku and National Coalition mental hospitals, i.e., human rat farms, which carry out this activity based on a prescription prescribed by Hannu Lauerma, whose patients the position of a pen on the table means a death sentence, which only tells you how Lauerma and his minions exercise power in these medical concentration camps of the National Coalition Party, which in Lauerma's opinion is due to the patient's imaginary mental illness and not, for example, Lauerma's insanity over human tortures with these patients who are bound by Finnish compulsory mental health treatment laws, and even Puanania has no mental illness. He was face to face with this true evil, arbitrariness and Nazi ideology of National Coalition in these human rat farms of National Coalition, where the law is what these doctors of National Coalition says, and this is the same with every patient, which as a procedure is hidden behind the YLE's propaganda about these fake mental health visits of young people in the world happiest nation in 6 times a row, and all these crimes against humanity is buried underneath these 1.5 million examination in public healthcare. In these human rat farms of National Coalition Party, where Puanania has been prescribed medication to be administered either based on an imaginary illness, but what I suspect is based on the behavior that comes from these provocations by the guards operating under Hannu Lauerma, and about which Puanania has told the courts. Puanania has been charged in this case by the corrupt courts of Finland because he resisted taking these drugs, the purpose of which is only to kill Puanania on a long run or just to torture him with the help of medicine, which is like a warm breath from Nazi bunkers and piece of the darkest side of human history, this time only with blue color. Finnish medicine whose fakeids are full of YLE propaganda and fake news about the good intentions of Finnish medicine, even though in Finland this medicine is 99% the systematic mass murder and medical torture of these disadvantaged and unprofitable citizens to the Finnish state. In the context of the Puanania case, it is clear how the staff of the Turku mental hospital have provoked Puanania, who are apparently just looking for an excuse to give Puanania these drugs based on his behavior and what the ultimate purpose of this hell on earth, ruled by Hannu Lauerma, is. Puanania himself has said that his condition get worse during this time in National Coalition human rat farms, which is the complete opposite of what Hannu Lauerma advertises about the treatment methods of this hell on earth and medical concentration camps he led in Turku.
Niin, Hannu Lauermalla psykiatrisen vankisairaalan Turun yksikössä. Mitä varten tällainen paikka on olemassa?
Tämä vankien akuuttisairaala, eli täällä hoidetaan hyvin dramaattisiakin sairaustiloja, alkaen delirium tremensistä, eli viinavierotusdeliriumista, johon kuolee merkittävä osa ihmisistä, jos se ei hoideta. Sitten on rajuja akuutteja psykooseja, joissa ihminen on harhojensa vallassa, on itsemurhakriisejä, on itsemurhaa yrittäneitä ihmisiä, on hämmentyneitä dementtejä, on niin tuskaisia ihmisiä, että he eivät pärjää tuolla vankilaosastoilla. Meillä on akuutin psykiatrian koko laaja kirjo täällä käsillä ja ihmisiä hoidetaan muutamasta päivästä muutamaan viikkoon tai joskus muutamaan kuukauteen. Ja lähes kaikki lähtevät täältä paremmassa kunnossa kuin ovat olleet tullessaan.
The the main activity of this lawless hell on earth seems to be the medical torture of these patients in the name of these treatments, and this is clearly seen in the case of Puanania, where his behavior has been treated with medication, after which Puanania has been provoked or perhaps even deliberately subjected to violence by these guards, because here in Finland's nominal rule of law, no one will believe anything Puanania says about his treatment when he has been convicted of a fake terrorist act in which 2 people died. And there are no European Committee for the Prevention of Torture and Inhuman or Degrading Treatment or Punish to come look and prevent these medical tortures of Finnish government, and which Puanania and all patients in the Finnish mental wards are subjected to. European Committee for the Prevention of Torture, which main purpose seems to be only to shine in the beautiful facades of democratic countries so that people would believe everything that these Nazi medical torture methods are not happening again, but which is actually everyday routines in Finnish medical care, and what we can see in this my video of Nazi torture methods in Finnish medical care clinics. If we look at what Puanania has said before these incidents in the mental hospital, Puanania has described his own condition as strange and really agitated, and that his condition has got worsened during this time in Turku mental ward. I have ordered these Finnish police criminal investigation reports, and I don't find any references where Puanania would talk about these situations and his medical torturing like in these court hearings, which only tells you how unfair these Finnish police criminal investigation really is, when it only focus on the crimes that Puanania is guilty when he has defended himself during these medical tortures. This deterioration in Puanania's condition clearly indicates that he has been given some drugs before, either voluntarily, which I suspect, but that his food has been secretly added with some drug, and why Puanania has thrown a full glass of water at the guard and threatened to kill him, because these drugs are clearly secretly fed to Puanania in food and drink because he refuses to take them voluntarily, and after all these methods have failed, there is only these force feedings with 3 guards in options. This method of secretly administering medications to patients in Finnish government agencies is extremely safe, because in this environment, where all the mistreatment of prisoners is just dismissed as the paranoid delusions of a mentally ill patient. In addition, one of the guards that Puanania has kicked in the groin has described Puanania that he just stared into the eyes, which the guard thinks has been some kind of preparing mentally to upcoming situation, but in reality this staring is due to medication that lowers your brain functions that has fed to Puanania. With the help of these brain-lowering drugs and their symptoms, Puanania is very easy to provoke any kind of situation that only make him look bad on the side of these guards of rule of law Finnish state, which is actually more terrorist state than Puanania could ever be, and whose police has led Europe's biggest drug trade on their headquarters and machinated the Kauhajoki school massacre, which for sure gain more fear into Finnish citizens than these stabbings of Puanania. The purpose of this is apparently only to get Puanania into these human rat farms of national coalition and under the Finnish compulsory treatment laws for the rest of his life, where he can be used as a human rat for medical researchers at the University of Turku. This also proves that Puanania's actions are only self-defense against these systematic unfair actions, just like the stabbing that occurred in the Turku, because this Turku University and the mental hospital have their own group whose purpose is to provoke these victims to attack society, because that is unfortunately the only way these Turku University medical human rats can be recruited from the free side of our society, which unfortunately always takes bystander victims with it, and which was seen in connection with Puanania's attack when he stabbed only women and whom he directed his anger at, because this group that provoked Puanania to attack consists mainly the nurses, which in Finland are mainly women's. Within the walls of these coalition parties' human rat farms, these forced treatments are certainly 100% the most common and used method, with which these patients can be tortured like Jews in Nazi Auschwitz, or, in the name of imaginary diseases, fed whatever poisons to these coalition party and Turku universities human rats. What these researchers want to study with these rats only to advance their own academic careers.
No, tässä me ollaan tavattu Rauli, joka tapaus on aika niin kuin kannustava tähän sähköhoitoon. Miten tavallista näin suuri ihmeparantuminen on?
No voi sanoa, että se on suhteellisen yleistä. Karkeasti arvioiden sähköhoito on noin 2 kertaa tehokkaampaa kuin masennuslääkkeet. Tämän takia varsin yleistä, että potilas, joka ei ole hyötynyt masennuslääkkeistä, hän voi silti hyötyä sähköhoidosta.
Mutta miksi se ei ole sitten yleisempää kuin se on?
Sähköhoito edellyttää nukutuksen ja nukutukseen liittyy aina pieniä haittavaikutuksia ja riskejä. Ja sähköhoitoon noin toimenpiteenä liittyy muistihäiriöiden esiintymistä.
Kuinka tavallisia ne muistihäiriöt on?
Suurimmalla osalla potilaita, ja tämä tarkoittaa yli 90%, niin nämä muistihäiriöt ikään kuin alkaa siitä, kun sähköhoito aloitetaan, ja tavallisesti ne loppuu 2 viikon kuluessa sen viimeisen sähköhoitokerran jälkeen.
Joo, eli se ei tarkoita sitä, että on loppuikänsä lyhytkestoisen muistin ongelmia, vaan se liittyy nimenomaan tämän hoidon.
Joo, nimenomaan tämän hoidon ajanjaksoon. Masentus tai muut sairaudet, jos sinänsä aiheuttavat muistihäiriöitä, niin suurimmalla osalla potilaista 2 viikkoa sähköhoidon päättymisen jälkeen muisti toimii itse asiassa paremmin kuin ennen sähköhoidon aloittamista.
No, sähköhoidon määrähän on lisääntynyt valtavasti, sanotaan viimeisen 10 vuoden aikana. Onko hoito itsessään kehittynyt?
Nyt on opittu tällaisia elektrodien asettamiseen liittyviä pieniä konsteja, joiden avulla näitä muistihäiriöitä voidaan vähentää.
Joo. Miten isona ongelmana sä itse koet sen, että ei tiedetä tarkalleen, mikä on se mekanismi, jolla se toimii?
No, itse en koe tätä ongelmana, koska jos ollaan tarkkoja, niin me emme myöskään tiedä, millä tavalla masennuslääkkeet toimii ja millä tavalla psykoterapia toimii noin aivotasolla.
Oletko kuitenkin sitä mieltä, että on hyvä, että on rinnalla terapiaa ja sitten on näitä muita hoitoja? Eli että se on semmoinen kokonaisuus.
Olen, nimenomaan. Eli nämä ikään kuin voimistaa toisiaan, kun näitä käytetään samaan aikaan.
Fucking liar!